The day she revealed her pregnancy, she was called a gold digger. She was kicked out of her own house, pregnant with twins in the rain. 6 years later, she returned by helicopter with 2 kids and a secret that would change everything. Neither he nor his mother were ready to face the truth they've been avoiding for so long. Before you hear this surprising story, subscribe to the channel for more twists and redemption stories. Emily Collins stared at the pregnancy test with her heart racing. 2 pink lines confirmed what her body had been signaling for weeks. Finally, after 2 years of trying, she was pregnant. She leaned against the marble countertop of the luxurious bathroom and took a deep breath, imagining Robert's reaction when he received the news. The clock showed 6:30 p.m. Robert would arrive soon at their mansion in the most exclusive neighborhood of Boston. Emily had planned everything: a candlelit dinner, his favorite wine, and then, at the perfect moment, the announcement that would change their lives forever. At 32, Emily maintained the beauty that had distinguished her as an international model. Her intense green eyes contrasted with her black hair that cascaded down to the middle of her back. It was this exotic combination that had attracted Robert Anderson Collins, heir to one of the country's largest fortunes, during a charity event. 5 years ago, the sound of the electronic gate interrupted her thoughts. Emily adjusted her navy blue dress, descending the marble stairs to greet her husband. "Good evening, darling." She leaned in to kiss him. Robert subtly turned away, offering only his cheek. "I need a drink," he announced, heading to the bar. In the living room, Emily followed him, keeping her smile intact. "I prepared a special dinner for us. I have important news." Robert's cell phone rang. He checked the display and a smile appeared on his lips, the first Emily had seen in weeks. "I can't talk right now." "Yes, of course." His voice softened considerably. When he hung up, Emily was standing in front of him, arms crossed. "Who was that?" "Business matters," he answered quickly, finishing his drink. "Robert, we need to talk. It's important." "Can it be quick?" "I'm exhausted." Emily took a deep breath. This wasn't how she had imagined this moment, but she couldn't hold the news any longer. "I'm pregnant." Time seemed to freeze. The empty glass slipped from Robert's hand, shattering on the marble floor. "What?" he finally asked, his voice strangely calm. "We're expecting a child," she repeated, a hesitant smile on her lips. "That's not possible." Robert ran his hand through the grey hair at his temples. "What do you mean?" "We've been trying for so long." "Emily," he cut her off, his voice ice cold. "These children aren't mine." Emily's world collapsed. His words hit her like a slap. "How can you say that?" "I had a vasectomy 3 months ago." Emily staggered, backward, seeking support from the wall. "What? Why would you do that without telling me?" "Because I already knew this would happen. My mother was right all along." Robert let out a bitter laugh. "You always just wanted my money and now you've found a way to secure it forever." "Your mother?" "Robert, I don't know what you're talking about. This child is yours. I never—" "Enough lies!" he shouted, punching the wall. "I have proof, Emily. I know about your meetings with Daniel." "Daniel, my cousin." "Robert, he was here twice to help me with the garden renovation." "Convenient, isn't it? The security cameras recorded you two getting very close in the gazebo." Emily remembered the day when Daniel had consoled her as she cried, frustrated after another failed attempt to get pregnant. "This is absurd." "I can take a DNA test right now." "For what? So you can manipulate the results too?" Robert countered. "My mother warned me about you from the beginning." Emily finally understood. Victoria Anderson, the cold and calculating matriarch, had never accepted her into the family. For 5 years she had subtly undermined their relationship with insinuations and veiled comments. "Your mother has hated me since day one," Emily murmured. "And you're choosing to believe her instead of me, your wife." "Ex-wife," Robert corrected. "The divorce papers will arrive tomorrow. I want you out of this house by dawn." Emily felt as if she'd been punched in the stomach. "Robert, I'm pregnant. They're your children." "Children?" "The doctor called today. They're twins." For a brief moment, something wavered in Robert's eyes. Doubt, perhaps? But soon his expression hardened again. "Even better." 2 children to extort money from the fool here. At that moment, Victoria Anderson entered, imposing in her grey tailored suit. "I heard shouting," she said coldly. "I see the truth has finally come to light." "You planned all this," Emily accused, her eyes tearing up. "You poisoned your son against me for years." Victoria smiled without emotion. "Darling, I'm just protecting what's mine. This family, this fortune. You never belonged in this world." "Mother was right about you from the start," Robert added. "I was just too blind to see it." Victoria approached her son. "It's better this way, Robert. She leaves discreetly, with a good sum to keep. Her mouth shut and we move on with our lives." "I don't want your money," Emily protested. "I want you to believe me. Do 5 years together mean nothing?" "They mean 5 years of lies," Robert retorted. "Security, escort Mrs. Collins to the exit." With a broken heart, Emily went upstairs to gather her things. Martha, the housekeeper, who had always treated her with respect, was packing clothes into suitcases, silent tears running down her wrinkled face. "I'm so sorry, Mrs. Collins," she whispered. "What they're doing to you isn't fair." Emily just nodded, unable to speak. Moving automatically, she began separating personal documents, family jewelry, and photographs. The rest, the expensive gifts, the designer clothes, she would leave behind. In a drawer, she found her grandmother's wedding band, the only inheritance she had received. She placed it on her finger, replacing the diamond ring Robert had given her. That small gold band symbolized the true love her grandparents had shared for 50 years, a love she thought she had found, but which had turned out to be just an illusion. Exactly 1 hour later, Emily came downstairs with 2 suitcases. In the living room, Victoria was waiting alone, a triumphant smile on her thin lips. Robert preferred to withdraw, she informed, to avoid more dramatizations. Emily faced the woman who had ruined her life. "You won, Mrs. Anderson. I hope the victory brings you the happiness you seek." Victoria laughed, a sound as cold as winter. "My son deserves someone of our class, dear. It was never personal, just natural selection." Emily raised her chin, determined not to give her mother-in-law the pleasure of seeing her fall apart. "One day you'll regret this, and when that day comes, I'll be there to see it." Outside, a merciless rain was battering the city. Emily hesitated, on the covered porch, looking at the storm. "The limousine will take you wherever you want," said one of the security guards. "No, thank you," Emily replied. "I prefer to walk." And so, alone, with only 2 suitcases containing the remnants of her former life, Emily Collins took her first step under the pouring rain. Tears mixed with rainwater as she walked out the gates of the mansion. At that moment, under the storm, Emily made a silent promise to the 2 little beings growing in her womb. "We will survive, and one day we will return." Emily walked for a door, hours in the rain before finding shelter in a small bakery that was closing. The owner, moved by the sight of the drenched pregnant young woman, offered her a hot tea while she tried to decide where to go. Her parents had died years before. Friends? Robert had always distanced her from her old companions. With trembling hands, Emily called Carmen, her former housekeeper from before her marriage. "Mrs. Collins, what happened? Are you crying?" Half an hour later, a taxi stopped in front of a simple building in North Boston. Carmen, a 60-year-old woman, was waiting in the lobby. When Emily got out of the vehicle, soaked and carrying 2 suitcases, the elderly woman let out an exclamation. "My God in heaven, child, what did they do to you?" In Carmen's small apartment, after a hot shower, Emily told her everything through tears. "They threw me out. Robert believes I cheated on him, that these babies aren't his." "Babies? They're twins. I found out today." Carmen sat beside her. "And they're not your husband's?" "Of course they are," Emily exclaimed. "It was his mother, that witch. She poisoned Robert against me. She made up that she saw me with my cousin, and now he says he had a vasectomy months ago, that it's impossible for him to be the father. Rich people have a habit of thinking they can walk all over others." Carmen squeezed her hand. Don't worry, you can stay here as long as you need." In the following weeks, Emily experienced the bitter taste of rejection. With her excellent resume, a degree in public relations, fluent in 3 languages, she believed she would find work quickly. She was wrong. Doors closed as soon as she mentioned her pregnancy, or when they recognized her face from the society columns. Rumors about her extramarital affair had spread quickly. To make matters worse, her bank accounts were frozen. The money she had brought was rapidly dwindling on medical appointments. Too proud to accept more than she had already received from Carmen, Emily sold her jewelry one by one, keeping only her grandmother's wedding band. In her 3rd month of pregnancy, fate offered an unexpected opportunity. Carmen convinced Emily to accompany her to the city market. As they walked among the stalls, Emily felt a sudden dizziness and leaned against a nearby counter. "Are you all right, ma'am?" asked an elderly man who was organizing fruits. "Just a little dizzy," Emily replied. The man quickly pulled up a stool and offered water. "You're pregnant, aren't you? My wife also felt sick in the beginning." "With twins," Carmen added proudly. "Well, that deserves a celebration." The man set aside some fruits. "I'm Anthony Parker, owner of Home Flavor restaurant nearby." Observing the movement in the market, Emily had an idea. "Mr. Parker, do you need any help at your restaurant by chance? I have experience in customer service." The man scratched his grey beard. "Well, my daughter, who managed the cash register, just moved to the countryside. But with the pregnancy, I don't know if you could stand for long periods. I can try. I just need a chance." The next day, Emily started working at Home Flavor, a simple family restaurant that served home-style food. Initially at the cash register, Mr. Parker soon discovered she had talent for much more. "You should study culinary arts, girl. You have a gift." Emily smiled, grateful for the compliment. In the following weeks, she dedicated herself to learning everything about the restaurant, from food preparation to supplier management. The work was exhausting, but for the first time in months, she felt useful. At night, she studied business administration through free online courses. As her belly grew, she also expanded her understanding of business. She saw potential in the small restaurant that few noticed. "Mr. Parker, have you thought about updating the menu?" she suggested after 3 months. "We could include healthier options, attract a different audience." "And where would we get the money for that, girl?" "I sold my wedding ring yesterday. If you'll allow me, I can invest here." That conversation marked the beginning of an unlikely partnership. With Mr. Parker's consent, Emily implemented small changes, first to the menu, then the decor, finally the marketing strategy. In 2 months, the restaurant's revenue increased by 40%. In her 6th month of pregnancy, she received the official divorce notification. Robert requested a DNA test as soon as the babies were born and denied any responsibility until then. Emily signed the papers without contesting. The girl dazzled by luxury no longer existed. In her place, a determined woman was being born, ready to build her own path. The 7th month brought new challenges. The doctor recommended rest due to high blood pressure, but Emily continued working part-time. "If I stop now, I'll go crazy," she explained to Mr. Parker. It was during a busy afternoon that she felt the first contractions. She tried to ignore them, but when her water broke in the middle of the restaurant's dining room, there was no denying it. "The babies are coming!" shouted a customer, while Mr. Parker called an ambulance. Emily was rushed to the nearest public hospital. The delivery was difficult. Alone, without the children's father present, she struggled for 12 hours. "Push, Mrs. Collins. I can see the first one's head," the nurse encouraged. With surprising determination, Emily brought her 2 little miracles into the world: Anthony, in honor of the man who had given her a chance, and Hannah, like her maternal grandmother. The next morning, Mr. Parker entered the hospital room timidly with small gifts. "My wife passed away 10 years ago. Since then, I've run the restaurant alone. My children went their own ways. I was thinking of selling everything until you came along." He handed her an envelope. "I want you to be my partner, 50% of the restaurant, in your name." Why? Emily asked, moved. Because I recognize talent when I see it, and because everyone deserves a second chance. The first year with the twins tested her resilience. Emily divided her time between breastfeeding, changing diapers, and managing the restaurant, which was constantly growing. She moved with the babies to a small apartment near her work. It's temporary, she assured them, while rocking Hannah in her arms and checking spreadsheets. Soon we'll have our own house. Home flavor transformed. Maintaining the essence of home cooking, Emily introduced modern elements. She created an executive lunch menu and themed dinners on weekends. In 6 months, there was a waiting list for Saturday dinners. We need to expand, she suggested to Mr. Parker. There's a vacant space upstairs for events. When the twins turned 1, Emily organized a small celebration at the restaurant. In the middle of the party, Mr. Parker asked for everyone's attention. I want to make a special toast to the woman who saved home flavor, and in a way saved me too. Few know, but she's in culinary school, studying at night after the children are asleep. If that's not determination, I don't know what is. Applause echoed through the packed room. Emily, with Hannah in her arms, and Anthony Jr. clinging to her leg, felt tears of gratitude and achievement. That night, as she put the twins to bed, she realized she had found something much more valuable than the luxury she had left behind. She had found purpose, respect, and a chosen family. What she didn't know was that Robert was discreetly following her progress. Through private investigators, he had discovered where she lived, the restaurant she co-managed, the healthy growth of the twins. Something inside him, perhaps regret, perhaps curiosity, was beginning to awaken. Meanwhile, in the Anderson mansion, Victoria observed the city she considered her kingdom through the window. In her hands, a recent photograph of the twins. Her eyes narrowed as she noticed the undeniable similarities to her son. Impossible, she muttered, crumpling the photograph. But it was true, and that truth would soon forever change the destiny of that divided family. 5 years passed. Emily Collins walked through the spacious hall of her newest venture, Essence, a sophisticated restaurant in the heart of Boston's financial district. It was the 4th establishment of the Flavor Group, which had begun with the small and welcoming home flavor and was now rapidly expanding throughout the city. The chef is worried about the delivery of the special olive oil for tomorrow's dish, informed Renee, her executive chef and right-hand woman, approaching quickly. Call Marcus. He can divert part of the delivery from Hannah's bistro to here, Emily replied, checking details of the decor for the next day's grand opening. At 37, Emily radiated a confidence that only success earned through sweat could bring. Her face, which had once graced fashion magazines, now appeared in business and culinary publications, celebrating the chef-entrepreneur who revolutionized Boston's gastronomic scene. Mommy, the childish voice echoed through the still empty hall. Hannah, now 5 years old, ran between the tables, dark hair bouncing in rebellious curls. Behind her, at a more restrained pace, came Anthony, his serious expression remarkably resembling the father he barely knew. "Weren't you supposed to be in school?" Emily asked, bending down to hug the twins. "Today is Parent-Teacher Conference Day," explained Carmen, who accompanied them. Anthony won first place in the science fair, and Hannah was chosen for the piano recital. Emily felt a pang of guilt. With the opening of the new restaurant, she had completely forgotten about the school meeting. "I'm sorry, my loves. I promise. I'll be at the recital, Hannah, and we'll celebrate your project, Anthony." The children smiled, accustomed to their mother's busy routine, but with no doubts about her love. Emily had built her empire always with them nearby. In the improvised office at the back of Home Flavor, when they were babies, later in the kitchens of the restaurants where they learned to appreciate flavors, and in their spacious new home, in Brookline, where they had a room just for studies and projects. "Why don't we take you for ice cream while Mommy finishes up here?" suggested Renee, winking at Emily, who silently thanked her friend for understanding. When she was alone, Emily allowed herself a moment of reflection. In 5 years, she had transformed a small neighborhood restaurant into a respected chain. Old Anthony, her first partner and mentor, now enjoyed a comfortable retirement in Cape Cod, but regularly visited the restaurants, treated as a living legend by the newer employees. The phone vibrated in the pocket of her impeccably tailored blazer. It was Marcus, her financial director. "Emily, we have a situation. I just received an interesting call. Someone wants to buy the Flavor Group." "Buyers appear all the time, Marcus. We're not for sale." "This one is different. He represents Anderson Enterprises." Emily felt her blood freeze in her veins. "Robert?" "Not directly. Someone named Edward Matthews, a lawyer for the group." Edward Matthews. Emily remembered him well. The personal lawyer of old Nathaniel Anderson, a father-in-law who had always treated her with distant cordiality. "What did you tell him?" "That any proposal should be sent in writing for evaluation, but that we weren't actively seeking investors." "Good. Keep me informed if there are any developments." Emily ended the call, her mind buzzing with questions. Why, after all these years, would Robert appear through his lawyer? What could Anderson Enterprises want with her restaurant group? The answer came faster than she expected. The next day, during the busy inauguration of Essence, Emily was informed of the arrival of an unexpected guest. "He wasn't on the list, but insists he has a personal invitation from you," explained the hostess, nervous. At the back of the entrance hall, Robert Anderson Collins was waiting, elegant in his dark suit, but with the weary countenance of someone carrying invisible worries. "What are you doing here?" Emily asked directly, maintaining a calculated distance. "I came to congratulate you on the new restaurant," he replied, offering a hesitant smile, "and to talk about our children." The mention of the children made Emily's heart race. 5 years, Robert. You ignored their existence for 5 years. Why now?" He looked away, visibly uncomfortable. "Can we talk in private?" Emily led him to the small office at the back of the restaurant. She closed the door and crossed her arms, her posture defensive. "I'm listening." Robert took a deep breath. "My father passed away 2 years ago." "I heard. I'm sorry." "Before he died, he hired investigators. He found out about the twins." Robert ran his hand through his hair, now with more grey strands than Emily remembered. "He secretly had a DNA test done, with samples collected when they were in the hospital." Emily narrowed her eyes. "When they had pneumonia, how did he get access?" "Money opens many doors," Robert interrupted. "The important thing is that he confirmed it. They are my children." Emily felt a mixture of anger and validation. "They were always your children. You chose not to believe." "I know." For the first time, he seemed genuinely remorseful. "There isn't a day that I don't regret listening to my mother that night." Emily studied him in silence. The years had not been kind to Robert. The arrogant and confident businessman she had known seemed to have given way to a tired man, carrying the weight of wrong decisions. "What do you want, Robert?" "To meet my children, to be part of their lives if you'll allow it." Emily let out a dry laugh. "And I suppose the offer to buy the Flavor Group is just a coincidence." Robert seemed genuinely surprised. "What offer?" "Your lawyer, Edward Matthews, contacted my financial director yesterday, exploring interest in selling the Flavor Group to Anderson Enterprises." A flash of understanding crossed Robert's face. "It wasn't my initiative. It must be my mother's doing. Even sick, she still tries to control everything." "Sick?" "Early onset Alzheimer's." Robert sat heavily in a chair. "In the last 2 years since Dad's death, she started making erratic business decisions. The Anderson empire is unstable. Our shareholders are concerned." Emily processed the information in silence. The irony didn't escape her. The woman who had orchestrated her downfall, who had manipulated so many lives with her sharp mind, was now losing precisely that capacity. "I'm sorry about Mrs. Anderson," she finally said, surprising herself with the sincerity in her own voice. "But that doesn't explain why you decided to show up now after so long." Robert looked at her directly for the first time. "Because I'm trying to fix my mistakes before it's too late, for the family business and, more importantly, for me as a father." He paused. "I've seen photos of the children, Emily. Anthony is my exact copy at his age. And Hannah has my grandmother's smile. Emily felt the wall she had built around her heart waver slightly. You abandoned them. I know. And I don't expect your forgiveness, nor theirs. I'm just asking for a chance. The silence that followed was interrupted by a soft knock on the door. Renee poked her head into the office. Sorry to interrupt, but the critics from the gastronomic guide just arrived. I'll be right there, Emily replied, automatically adjusting her blazer. She turned to Robert. Tonight is important to me. We can continue this conversation another day. Robert stood up, taking the cue to leave. Can I leave my card with my personal number? Emily accepted the small rectangle of paper, feeling the disproportionate weight it carried. The weight of 5 years of absence, of unanswered questions, of a past she thought she had definitively buried. I'm not promising anything, Robert. My priority is the twins and their emotional well-being. That's all I ask. A fair consideration. When he left, Emily remained motionless in the office for a few minutes, trying to organize the storm of thoughts. Part of her wanted to protect her children from any disappointment Robert might cause. Another part recognized that they deserved the chance to know their father, to form their own opinion. Finally, she put the card in her purse and returned to the inauguration party, the professional smile back on her face like a perfectly adjusted mask. The night would be a success. The critics would be impressed. Her empire would continue to grow. As for Robert and his intentions, that was a problem for another day. What Emily didn't know, as she toasted to success with VIP guests and journalists, was that Robert's reapproach had more complex motivations than simple paternal remorse. The true reason behind his return would soon be revealed, a truth capable of shaking the foundations of the empire that Emily had built with so much sacrifice. A week after the unexpected encounter with Robert, Emily was at the central office of the Flavor Group reviewing financial reports when her phone rang. Mrs. Collins, sorry to bother you. It was the secretary from the twins' school. There was a situation with Anthony. He got involved in a heated discussion with a classmate. Emily arrived at the school in record time, finding her son sitting dejectedly outside the principal's office. His brown eyes, so similar to Robert's, were red from crying. What happened, son? She asked, kneeling in front of him. Lucas said I don't have a dad, that he abandoned us because he didn't want us. The boy's voice faltered. I said it wasn't true, that Dad is on a business trip, but he laughed at me. Emily's heart tightened. For years she had avoided talking openly about Robert, creating a simplified version. For the twins, their father was a busy man who traveled a lot for work. One day they would meet him, a day that Emily secretly hoped would never come. After a brief conversation with the principal, Emily took Anthony home. Hannah was waiting for them anxiously, hugging her brother as soon as they arrived. Mom, is it true that our dad doesn't like us? Asked the girl directly, always more straightforward than her brother. Emily realized she could no longer postpone this conversation. She sat on the living room sofa, a child on each side. Your father and I separated before you were born. It was complicated. She chose her words carefully. He didn't know how to be a father. He was scared of the responsibility. But does he like us? Hannah insisted. He doesn't even know us, Anthony murmured. Emily took a deep breath. Actually, there's something I need to tell you. Your father contacted me recently. He wants to meet you. Hannah's eyes widened with hope. Really? When? Only if you want to, Emily emphasized. No one will force you to do anything. Anthony remained silent, processing the information. Hannah, impulsive as always, was already jumping with excitement. Of course we want to. All the kids have a dad, only we don't. Emily observed Anthony, who finally spoke. Why only now? After all this time? His son's perceptiveness no longer surprised her. At 5 years old, he already demonstrated an impressive capacity for analysis. That's a good question, son. I think your father finally realized the mistake he made. That night, after putting the children to bed, Emily took Robert's card out of her purse. She contemplated it for long minutes before picking up the phone. They want to meet you, she said without preamble when he answered, but I want to make some things clear. It will be a supervised meeting, at home flavor, where they feel safe. And if they show any discomfort, it's over. Thank you, Emily. Robert's voice sounded genuinely emotional. You won't regret it. The following Saturday, Emily nervously watched the clock in the restaurant, closed especially for that meeting. The twins, dressed with care, waited anxiously. Hannah wouldn't stop talking, imagining what her father would be like. Anthony was quiet, fiddling absent-mindedly with his napkin. At 12 sharp, Robert entered, carrying 2 colorful packages. Emily noticed his nervousness by the way he repeatedly adjusted his tie. They're ready, she informed, keeping her voice professional. Hannah is excited. Anthony is more reserved. Give him time. Robert nodded, visibly tense. And you? How? Are you? The question caught Emily by surprise. This isn't about me, it's about them. When she opened the door to the private room, Robert momentarily froze. There they were, 2 small beings who undeniably carried his blood, his features. Hannah was the first to react, approaching curiously. Are you our dad? She asked directly. Robert swallowed hard, emotional. Yes, I am. You must be Hannah. How did you know? Your mother told me you were the more talkative one. He knelt to be at her height. Turning to Anthony, still seated, he said, And you're... Anthony, you have my father's name and his eyes too. I have Grandpa's eyes? Asked the boy, finally interested. Exactly the same, he would be very proud. The lunch went surprisingly well. Robert delivered the presents, a telescope for Anthony and a painting kit for Hannah. The precise choice of gifts didn't go unnoticed. By Emily, someone had informed Robert about the children's specific interests. Do you live in that big house from Mom's old photos? Hannah asked between spoonfuls of dessert. Yes, I still live there. With the mean grandma. A heavy silence fell over the table. Emily choked on her water. Hannah, who said that? I heard you talking to Aunt Renee once. You said Grandma was a mean witch who made Daddy send us away. Emily felt her face hot with embarrassment, but Robert answered with surprising honesty. Your mother and your grandmother never got along. And yes, I still live with her, but she's sick now. Will she meet us too? Asked Anthony. Robert hesitated. Maybe one day, when she's better. When the children left to wash their hands, Emily and Robert were left alone. They're amazing, he said, genuine admiration in his voice. You've done an extraordinary job. I did what any mother would do. No, you didn't, Robert looked at her intensely. You raised them alone, built an empire, gave them a life of love and security. After everything you did, she completed. Let's be clear, Robert. I allow these meetings for their benefit, not yours. If they feel any discomfort, it's over. Robert nodded without argument. In the following weeks, a routine was established. Saturday outings, phone calls during the week. Hannah already comfortably called him Dad, while Anthony, though more reserved, was beginning to open up. Emily observed this approach with conflicting feelings. Robert seemed genuinely interested in the children, but something bothered her. The visits coincided with business meetings in the vicinity. During the outings, he carefully observed the functioning of the restaurants, asked questions about revenue expansion. Intrigued, Emily asked Marcus to discreetly investigate the current situation of Anderson Enterprises. 3 days later, the report confirmed her suspicions. The Anderson Empire was facing serious difficulties. Falling stocks, monumental debts, properties being sold at ridiculous prices to generate cash. They seem to be on the verge of collapse, concluded Marcus. There are rumors they're urgently seeking a majority investor. The pieces of the puzzle were beginning to fit together. Robert's sudden reappearance, the sudden interest in his children, the careful approach and constant praise for the flavor group. That night, Emily received a message from Robert. I'd like to discuss an important matter, something that might interest you and the future of our children. Emily felt her stomach sink. There it was finally, the true motivation behind all that act of the repentant father. Tomorrow, 10 a.m. at my office, she replied, determined to face the truth, however painful it might be. Robert received her at the impressive headquarters of Anderson Enterprises. Despite the luxurious decoration, Emily noticed small signs of decay. Slightly worn furniture, absence of the usual fresh flower arrangement, fewer employees circulating. "Emily, thank you for coming." Robert gestured for her to sit. "How are the children?" "Let's get straight to the point, Robert. What's the important matter involving the future of our children?" He shifted uncomfortably in his chair. "I have a business proposal for you. A proposal that would benefit both of us and secure Anthony and Hannah's future." "I'm listening." "Anderson Enterprises is facing temporary difficulties. We need a strategic partner with an innovative vision. And you thought of the Flavor Group as that partner." Robert nodded, apparently relieved he didn't have to elaborate further. "It would be a perfect merger. Our hotels with your restaurants, the traditional know-how of the Andersons with the innovation of the Flavor Group." Emily felt a mixture of anger and validation of her suspicions. "So that's it. 6 years of absolute silence. And when your empire is in ruins and mine is flourishing, you coincidentally remember you have 2 children." Robert turned pale. "It wasn't like that, Emily. I really wanted to meet them. The DNA test." "The test your father did years ago. Yes, I'm aware. And I'm also aware that you knew about the result at the time. It was a bluff, but it worked." Robert's guilty look was all the confirmation she needed. "You knew. All this time you knew they were your children and did nothing." "It's not that simple." "It never is it?" Emily leaned slightly forward. "Let me guess, Victoria wouldn't allow it. You didn't have the strength to confront her." "She threatened to disinherit me," Robert exploded. "And then Dad passed away, and everything started to crumble. She was making increasingly irrational decisions. And now that she's too sick to prevent it, you come to me," Emily completed, ice cold. "Not to build a genuine relationship with your children, but to save the remnants of the Anderson Empire." A heavy silence fell between them. Finally, Emily asked, "What will happen if there is no merger?" "Bankruptcy in 3 months." Robert's voice was almost a whisper. "Victoria doesn't know. In her moments of lucidity, she still believes we're at our peak." Emily felt an unexpected pang of compassion. There was something deeply sad about the fall of a dynasty like the Andersons. "How much do you need to stabilize the situation?" she asked, surprising herself. "You would consider helping." "I didn't mention a merger. I asked how much would be necessary to avoid immediate bankruptcy." As Robert mentioned a considerable figure, Emily was already calculating her options. Not for him, but for the twins who, like it or not, carried the Anderson name and were entitled to that legacy, a legacy that she now had the power to save or let crumble. What Robert didn't know was that any decision from Emily would come with very specific terms, terms that would forever change the balance of power between them. "I have conditions for this investment," Emily declared after hearing the amount Robert needed. "Conditions?" He seemed too relieved to question. "First, you legally recognize Anthony and Hannah as your children with all the rights that implies." Robert nodded promptly. "I was already planning to do that. Second, 50% of your shares in Anderson Enterprises go to a fund in the children's names, accessible only when they turn 25 years old." Again, Robert agreed without hesitation. "Third," continued Emily, her voice hardening, "you publicly acknowledge the truth about our divorce, how you expelled me while pregnant, how you denied paternity." Robert turned pale. "Emily, that would destroy my reputation." "Exactly. Rebuilding it will be your personal project for the next few years." She leaned over the desk. "Fourth, the administration of Anderson Enterprises will be restructured. You remain as president, but I appoint the new CEO and financial director." "Quite severe," commented Robert, fighting against his wounded pride. "Severe would be watching your empire fall while mine continues to grow. Severe would be denying your children the inheritance that is rightfully theirs because of your mistakes." Robert observed Emily for long seconds, as if truly seeing her for the first time in all those years. "Why would you do this? After everything? Why would you offer me any kind of help?" "I'm not doing this for you, I'm doing it for our children." 3 days later, an article in the main business newspaper announced, "Flavor Group and Anderson Enterprises announce strategic partnership." The subtitle revealed, Robert Collins publicly recognizes twin children with ex-wife Emily Collins and admits past mistakes. The interview accompanying the article showed a surprisingly honest Robert, admitting how he had denied his children and expelled Emily while pregnant, manipulated by his mother. Social media buzzed with divided opinions. Some admired his courage. In admitting his mistakes, others condemned him for his past cruelty. For Emily, that public confession was just the first step. Marcus had already temporarily assumed as CEO of Anderson Enterprises, implementing drastic cost containment and restructuring measures. "How is Victoria reacting to all this?" Emily asked during a meeting with Robert at the Flavor Group's headquarters. "She doesn't know everything." Robert ran his hand over his tired face. "Her doctors recommend avoiding stressful situations. I told her about the children, but not about our commercial agreement. She'll find out eventually." "Yes, but I hope that when that happens we'll have already stabilized the situation." Emily nodded, satisfied with the progress. Preliminary reports showed that the capital injection and new management were already producing positive results. The credibility of Anderson Enterprises was slowly beginning to recover. Meanwhile, Robert's relationship with the twins flourished. Anthony finally lowered his defenses, fascinated by the stories his father told about the family business. Hannah, naturally warmer, already greeted him with enthusiastic hugs. Emily observed this approach with caution. Part of her still feared that Robert might disappear again, leaving two heartbroken children. Another part recognized that he seemed genuinely committed to being a present father. "Mom, can I sleep at Dad's house on Saturday?" Hannah asked during dinner, 2 weeks after the agreement. Emily almost choked on her wine. "At Dad's house. Did he invite you?" "Yes, he said there's a huge room waiting for us with new toys and everything." Emily exchanged a look with Anthony, who remained silent. "And you, son? Do you want to go too?" The boy shrugged, trying to appear indifferent, but Emily knew that gleam in his eyes. "Maybe." "If Hannah go—" Emily took a deep breath. The idea of her children sleeping in the Anderson mansion, where Victoria still lived, gave her chills. But she couldn't deny this experience to the twins. "I'll talk to your father first. There are details we need to work out." Later that night, Emily called Robert. "Hannah mentioned an invitation to sleep at your house. Is that true?" "I was going to call you about that," he replied quickly. "I know it's a big step, but I thought it might be good for them to see where I grew up." "And your mother?" Emily couldn't keep the concern out of her voice. "She's upstairs, with 24-hour nursing care. She rarely comes down. I promise the children won't be alone with her at any time." Emily hesitated. The idea of the twins in that house under the same roof as Victoria still disturbed her. But denying would mean placing herself as an obstacle between the children and their father. "All right," she finally agreed. "But I'll bring them personally, and I want to meet the nurse responsible for your mother." On Saturday, Emily drove to the mansion that had once been her home, a knot of anxiety tightening her stomach. The twins in the back seat could barely contain their excitement. "Is it as big as I remember?" asked Hannah, eyes wide when the imposing gate opened. "Bigger? Probably," Emily replied, forcing a smile. Robert greeted them at the entrance, visibly anxious and happy. Emily noticed small changes in the mansion, some paintings missing, antique furniture that had certainly been sold to raise capital. Subtle signs of the crisis the family was facing. "I prepared a surprise for you," announced Robert, leading the twins to the backyard. Emily followed them, remembering how she loved that garden. There they found an elaborate, newly built treehouse, with a slide swings and a small zipline. The twins screamed with joy, running to explore. "I had it built over the last 2 weeks," explained Robert, proudly observing the children's reaction. "I wanted them to have something special here." Emily had to admit the gesture was touching. "Thank you for that, it means a lot to them." While the children played, Emily met the team caring for Victoria, 2 professional nurses who alternated in shifts, supervised by a renowned geriatrician. She felt more at ease upon seeing the professionalism of the care. "Does she ask about the grandchildren?" Emily questioned when they were alone. Robert sighed. On good days, yes, she seems genuinely curious. On bad days, she still believes you deceived us. I don't know if I'll ever be ready to allow her to meet them. I understand. Robert didn't insist. It's your decision as a mother. That peaceful acceptance, the respect for her boundaries as a mother, was something new coming from Robert. Emily realized that perhaps he was really changing. As she said goodbye to her children, she felt that pang of maternal anxiety, the protective instinct screaming not to leave them there. But the animated smiles on Anthony and Hannah's faces convinced her she was doing the right thing. Behave, obey your father, and call me before going to bed, she recommended, hugging them at length. They'll be fine, assured Robert, accompanying her to the car. I promise. Emily was about to get into the vehicle when she noticed a movement in the second-floor window. A silhouette was observing the scene. Victoria. A shiver ran down her spine, but she pushed away the bad feeling. It was just old fears resurfacing. That night, returning to her empty apartment, Emily felt a strange mixture of emotions. Pride in the empire she had built alone, satisfaction at the turnaround she had imposed on Robert, but also an inexplicable emptiness, as if a piece of the puzzle was still missing to complete her story. Her phone rang at 9 p.m. It was Robert. I just called to say everything's fine, he said, perceiving her likely anxiety. The twins loved. Dinner, had their bath, and now we're reading a story before bed. Do you want to talk to them? Emily spoke briefly with her children, confirming they were happy and safe. As she hung up, she felt a weight lifting from her shoulders. Maybe this could work. Maybe Robert had really changed. What Emily didn't know was that, at that exact moment in Victoria Anderson's room, a very different scene was unfolding. The matriarch, having a rare moment of complete lucidity, sat upright in her resting chair, as her personal nurse reported the day's events. The twins are here? In my house? Asked Victoria, eyes once cloudy now shining with dangerous clarity. Yes, ma'am. Your son brought them to spend the night. Victoria gripped the arm of the chair with surprising strength for her condition. Bring me the phone and call Valerie. When her faithful personal assistant entered the room, Victoria was already fully awake, as if the disease had temporarily retreated in the face of her determination. The plan we discussed. It's time to implement it, she declared with renewed authority. Robert brought the bastards to our house. Valerie seemed to hesitate. Mrs. Anderson, maybe you should reconsider. They're just children and... Children who threaten everything we've built, Victoria cut in coldly. One of them doesn't even carry our blood. Valerie frowned, confused. What do you mean? Victoria smiled, a cold and calculating smile that recalled the powerful woman she once was. I have proof that the girl isn't Robert's daughter. And tomorrow, when Emily comes to pick them up, everyone will know the truth. What Victoria was planning was her final blow, an explosive revelation meticulously prepared over years, saved for the perfect moment. A revelation that would threaten not only the commercial agreement between Emily and Robert, but the very essence of the family she had built with so much love. Downstairs, oblivious to the storm forming, Anthony and Hannah were peacefully falling, asleep on their first night in the Anderson mansion, while Robert watched, them with a mixture of belated pride and regret for the lost years. The next morning, Emily drove to the Anderson mansion to pick up the twins. Her heart was racing, an inexplicable anxiety accompanying her throughout the journey. She had slept poorly, tormented by confused dreams where Victoria appeared smiling maliciously. Upon arrival, she noticed something strange. The movement in the house was unusual for a Sunday morning. Unknown cars parked, people in suits coming and going. When she rang the doorbell, she was greeted not by Robert but by Valerie, Victoria's personal assistant. Mrs. Collins, good that you're here. Please follow me, said the woman with a tense expression. Where are my children? Emily asked, immediately alert. In the garden with Mr. Collins. But first, Mrs. Anderson would like to see you. Emily stopped in the middle of the entrance. I have nothing to discuss with Mrs. Anderson. She insists it's about the children, an urgent matter. The enigmatic tone left Emily uneasy. Against her better judgment, she followed Valerie upstairs to the main bedroom, where Victoria Anderson had spent decades reigning over the family. The matriarch was seated in an armchair by the window, perfectly groomed and made up, very different from the image of a patient with advanced Alzheimer's that Robert had described. Her eyes, disturbingly similar to Hannah's, shone with sharp lucidity. "Emily," Victoria greeted, her voice stronger than would be expected. "We finally meet again. Please, sit down." "I prefer to stand. Where are my children?" "Your children?" Victoria repeated, almost savoring the words. "It's precisely about this that we need to talk." Emily felt a chill run down her spine. "Be direct, Mrs. Anderson. I don't have time for games." The elderly woman smiled, a cold smile that didn't reach her eyes. "Always direct, aren't you? A quality I didn't properly appreciate in you," Victoria made a gesture to Valerie, who approached with a folder. "What would you say if I told you that one of these children is not Robert's biological child?" Emily froze, her blood turning to ice in her veins. "What are you talking about?" "I have here the result of a DNA test performed with the same samples that my late husband collected." Victoria took a document from the folder. "As you can see, Anthony is unequivocally Robert's son. But Hannah, well, she has another biological father." Emily took the paper with trembling hands. It looked like a legitimate report from a renowned laboratory, with scientific terminology and everything. According to the document, while Anthony presented 99.99% compatibility with Robert, Hannah had no biological relation to him. "This is forged," declared Emily, returning the paper. "A pathetic attempt to separate our family again." "I thought you'd say that," Victoria smiled again, handing her more documents. "That's why I also have these photos of you with your lover at the time, and hotel records, and testimonies." The photos showed Emily with Daniel, her cousin, at various moments. The same images that Robert had mentioned, but now accompanied by manipulated hotel records and receipts to make it appear they were having an affair. "Daniel is my cousin, as I've explained 1,000 times." Emily kept her voice firm, although she felt panic growing. "This is a gross fabrication." "Perhaps or perhaps not." Victoria leaned slightly forward. "The important thing is, what will Robert and the children think when they see all this, especially now that they're finally building a relationship?" Emily stared at the elderly woman with growing clarity. "This is what you've always wanted, isn't it? To destroy any possibility of family between us." "I just want to protect the Anderson legacy," Victoria replied coldly. "A legacy that you now threaten to take through this ridiculous agreement that my son naively signed." "How did you know?" "About the agreement?" Emily questioned, surprised. "I have my methods, dear, even when sick." Victoria adjusted herself in the armchair. "Now we have two options. You tear up that agreement, return full control of the companies to Robert and keep your distance from Anderson businesses forever, or this documentation reaches his and the children's hands today." The ultimatum hung in the air like a toxic cloud. Emily felt an icy fury taking over her body. "You know what's ironic, Mrs. Anderson? For years I feared this moment. I feared that your money and influence could somehow take my children away from me." Emily took a step forward, her voice surprisingly calm. "But now I realize I'm no longer afraid of you." "You should be," Victoria retorted. "I can destroy everything you've built with a single call." "No, you can't," Emily smiled for the first time. "Because I prepared myself for this day. Your forged documents mean nothing against years of medical records, legitimate DNA tests I conducted when the twins were born, and witnesses to your manipulative behavior." It was Victoria's turn to appear disconcerted. "You're bluffing." "A successful businesswoman learns to protect herself, Mrs. Anderson, especially when she has a declared enemy with unlimited resources." Emily collected the forged documents. "I'll take these with me. They'll be useful when I file a lawsuit for forgery, slander, and harassment." Victoria visibly paled. "You wouldn't dare." "Don't underestimate what a mother would do to protect her children. The same advice you gave Robert 6 years ago, remember?" Emily headed to the door. "Now, if you'll excuse me, I'm going to get my children. Both of my children." In the garden, Emily found Robert playing with the twins in the treehouse. The scene was surreally normal. A father and his children laughing together on a sunny morning. For a moment she hesitated to interrupt that moment of happiness. "Mommy!" Hannah shouted upon seeing her, quickly descending the slide. Emily hugged her daughter with extra strength, as if fearing to lose her. Anthony soon joined the hug. "Everything okay?" asked Robert, approaching with a worried expression. "You're pale." "We need to talk," Emily replied, "in private." While the children continued playing under the supervision of a nanny, Emily led Robert to the gazebo at the back of the garden, ironically the same place where she had been photographed with her cousin years ago. "Your mother just showed me forged documents claiming that Hannah is not your biological daughter," she said without beating around the bush. Robert turned pale. "What? That's absurd." "I agree, but she's determined to use this to separate us again, to void our agreement." Robert ran his hand over his face, visibly shaken. "She told me she wanted to meet the grandchildren today. I thought she was finally accepting." "She will never accept, Robert. And we need to decide now how to deal with this before it affects the children." He looked at her intensely. "Do you really believe I would doubt again, that I would fall for the same trick?" "I don't know. You fell once." "I was young and insecure. I'm not that man anymore." Robert took a deep breath. "And Hannah is as much my daughter as Anthony is my son. I don't need tests to know that." The words, so different from those uttered on that fateful night 6 years before, hit Emily deeply. There was a sincerity in him that couldn't be ignored. "What do we do now?" Robert seemed to make a difficult decision. "I'll institutionalize her. The doctors have been recommending a specialized clinic for months, but I resisted out of sentimentality. Now I see it's necessary. And what about our agreement?" "It remains exactly as it is," Robert confirmed firmly. "In fact, I want to expand it, transfer more shares to the children's names, create an educational foundation with their names." Emily observed him carefully, looking for any sign of falsehood. She found none. "Why?" she finally asked. "Because I'm trying to do the right thing, even if it's too late." Robert hesitated before continuing. "And because I see what you've built, Emily. Not just an empire of successful restaurants, but a solid family, balanced, and happy children, despite the father's absence. You achieved all this alone while I let my mother destroy everything that mattered." A week later, Victoria Anderson was discreetly admitted to a luxury clinic specializing in Alzheimer's patients. The forged documents were destroyed, and the agreement between Emily and Robert was not only maintained, but expanded, ensuring a secure future for Anthony and Hannah within the legacy of both families. During the twins' 6th birthday party, held in the renovated garden of Home Flavor, Emily watched her children running among guests, Robert actively participating in the games. Mr. Parker, her first mentor, was animatedly discussing international expansion plans for the Flavor Group with Marcus. "Thoughtful?" asked Renee, approaching with 2 glasses of champagne. "Reflecting on the journey until here," Emily replied, accepting the drink. 6 years ago, I was pregnant, abandoned in the rain. Today, we run a gastronomic empire. The twins are happy, and even Robert has found his place in this story." "It's quite a story," commented Renee. "It should become a book someday." Emily laughed, raising her glass in a toast. "To the family we choose, to resilience, and to new beginnings." As the sun set over Boston, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink, Emily Collins finally felt that the circle was closing, not with vengeance or bitterness, but with something much more valuable, the peace of someone who knew she had built, with her own hands, a full life. A life that not even Victoria Anderson, with all her power and fortune, had been able to destroy. Some say success is the best revenge, but for Emily, the true triumph wasn't in the award-winning restaurants or the hefty bank accounts. It was in her children's smiles, in the strength she discovered within herself, and in the certainty that, no matter what the future held, she would never again be defined by others' errors or judgments. 2 years passed. Since the final agreement with Robert and Victoria's institutionalization, the Flavor Group was now expanding beyond Boston's borders, with restaurants in Portland, Chicago, and London. Emily Collins, now 39, was internationally recognized as a businesswoman and chef with social impact. Alongside Renee and Marcus, she had founded the Essence Institute, a project that offered free culinary training for women in vulnerable situations. The program, which already had more than 200 graduates, had become a model replicated by foreign institutions. At the inauguration ceremony of the Institute's new unit in Miami, Emily took the stage with Hannah and Anthony by her side. The audience, composed of former students, authorities, and journalists, gave her a standing ovation as Emily spoke firmly. "When I was expelled from home, pregnant and discredited, I never imagined that moment would mark the beginning of my true story. Today I see that the pains we carry can also nourish the world if we know how to transform them." The speech went viral on social media. Influencers, women's magazines, and even starred chefs reposted excerpts with phrases like resilience, at the table, and Emily Collins' revolution. But it wasn't all roses. The Institute's success also bothered conservative sectors. A week after the inauguration, Emily received an anonymous letter threatening to reveal an old secret that could ruin everything. The handwriting was familiar. She suspected former allies of Victoria. Instead of yielding to fear, Emily hired a private investigator. In a few days, she discovered that a former lawyer of Victoria's was trying to sell old Anderson family documents to the press. Among them was a letter never sent, a confession from Victoria herself dated years ago, admitting that she had falsified Hannah's DNA documents to maintain control over Robert. It was the definitive proof. Emily called a press conference revealing everything with transparency. She showed the letter, the forged documents, and concluded, "Many have tried to destroy what I've built, but I didn't build alone. I built with love, with truth, with my children by my side, and that's why none of this will fall." Public opinion, far from turning against her, further strengthened her legacy. Hannah, who at 8 years old was beginning to better understand the world, read the comments with shining eyes. "Mom, are you a heroine?" Emily smiled. "I'm just a mother. But sometimes being a mother is being a heroine too." And this was just the beginning of a new phase, perpetuating what she had built, not just for her children, but for hundreds of other women who one day were told they would be nothing. And now they were everything. At 9 years old, Hannah Collins showed clear signs that she had inherited more than Emily's intense eyes. She was fearless, creative, and exhibited a keen sensitivity for flavors. During a visit to the Essence restaurant, she surprised the chefs by suggesting an adjustment to the dessert of the day. "It's too sweet. If we add a touch of acidity here, the finish becomes cleaner," she opined, while moving a spoon in her mouth thoughtfully. Renee laughed. "We have a mini chef here." Emily observed the scene with pride, but also with caution. She didn't want her children to be pressured by expectations. But Hannah seemed to follow her own rhythm, unafraid to experiment or make mistakes. It was then that the unexpected invitation came. The television program Young Culinary Talents, a kind of educational reality show, wanted Hannah to participate in the new season. "This is too much for her. She's just a child," Emily told Renee during the agenda meeting. "Yes, but she wants to, and she's ready. Hannah has opinion, charisma, and talent. She'll charm America." After much reflection, Emily gave in, with one condition: Hannah would have psychological support throughout the process. Robert, who was following everything closely, agreed. During the recordings, Hannah quickly became the audience's favorite. She created colorful dishes, gave fun names to her preparations, and enchanted judges with her brutal sincerity and spontaneity. "I think you tried to make it too fancy, mister," she said to a teenage competitor. "Just because it looks good doesn't mean it tastes good." Emily watched each program with her heart in her throat, not for fear of her daughter's failure, but for the speed with which Hannah was growing under the spotlight. She felt proud, yes, but also nostalgia for that time when the girls' world was limited to the home kitchen. In the program's finale, Hannah took second place, losing by a single point of technique. But she emerged acclaimed as the new junior promise of American gastronomy. "You shined, my daughter," said Emily, hugging her at the end. "And most importantly, you were yourself the whole time." Hannah smiled, her eyes shining. "And you, Mom, were already famous. Now it's my turn." Emily laughed, but deep down she knew her daughter wasn't joking. And so, under the eyes of an entire country, a new generation was being born. While Hannah shone under the spotlight, Anthony Collins preferred the silence of libraries and the precision of numbers. At 10 years old, he had already read books on economics, architecture, and data science. Emily, noticing his precocious interest, provided a mentor, Professor Joseph Azevedo, a specialist in applied mathematics and personal friend of Marcus. "He doesn't need to be a genius, Joseph. I just want him to have the chance to explore what he likes," said Emily. Joseph agreed, but soon realized that Anthony was, in fact, special. In a few weeks, the boy was naturally solving university-level equations. He began creating his own projects, like an app that calculated food waste in restaurants. "It's to help moms save on inventory at the Flavor Group," he explained modestly. The app, presented at a school technology fair, attracted investors' attention. Emily refused all offers. "Anthony is still a child, and this will be something of his, not ours." But media attention inevitably came. Articles titled, "The Little Genius of Tech Gastronomy," began to circulate. Anthony handled it well, but remained discreet. While his sister sought the stage, he sought the codes and hidden structures behind the restaurant's success. It was during one of these visits that he witnessed a manager mistreating an employee with special needs. Anthony intervened. "This isn't right. We have an inclusion policy. You're breaking a value of our family." The report reached Emily, who summoned the manager for a meeting and praised her son. "That's leadership, Anthony, the rarest kind, the one that defends those who can't defend themselves." At 12, the boy was already part of the youth council of the Essence Institute and helping to build a digital donation management system. His worldview was rooted in justice and innovation. One night, Emily found him still awake, studying, with the laptop on his lap. "Don't you have a test tomorrow?" "I do, but I wanted to finish this prototype to measure energy efficiency in kitchens." Emily smiled and kissed his forehead. "You'll go far, my son. But don't forget, before being a genius, be happy." Anthony smiled back. "I'm trying, but sometimes it feels like I'm from another planet." Emily sat beside him. "Then maybe your mission is to make this planet better." With the twins' early fame came the need for balance. Emily knew that success could be both a blessing and a trap. She decided, therefore, to take them on a month-long trip through Europe during school vacation, not as junior entrepreneurs, but as simple children. Lisbon was the first stop. At the Flavor Group restaurant in the Portuguese capital, Hannah was invited to prepare a special dessert for the evening. Anthony, in turn, helped organize the day's orders with a new digital system he had developed during the flight. But after the workday, they were tourists. They ran through old alleys, ate custard tarts, listened to Fado, and asked about castles. In France, they visited an organic farm on the outskirts of Lyon. Emily wanted them to understand the origin of food, the time of the land. There they saw the harvest, milked cows, and picked lavender. "This is true luxury," said Emily, watching her children sleep embraced by the aroma of the fields. In Italy, in Florence, Robert met them to spend a few days. He had suggested this in advance, and Emily, although wary, agreed. However, his intentions seemed genuine. He wanted to reconnect, not just as a father, but as a walking partner. "Do you think we could ever be a family again?" he asked one night by the Arno River. Emily looked at him for a long time. "We are a family, Robert, but not in the way you once knew." He nodded in silence, respecting the answer. But it was in Rome that Hannah asked the question Emily had feared for years. "Mom, if one day I want to live with Dad, would you let me?" Emily felt a tightness in her chest, but took a deep breath. She knew this moment would come. "I would let you, because trust isn't imposed. If you feel you need that to grow, I'll trust you. But also trust that I'll always be here when you want to come back." The honest answer made Hannah hug her mother tightly. "I don't want to go. I just wanted to know if you would let me." Emily smiled and knew that for the first time her daughter truly believed in the freedom of the love she received. Back in America, the twins had another surprise. Robert had bought an old colonial house in Cape Cod and invited the children to renovate it together. "It will be a weekend house. I want you to have something of ours outside of Boston, where time runs slower. Hannah was already choosing colors for the rooms, while Anthony was making spreadsheets for the renovation budget. Emily observed them from a distance, with a bittersweet feeling. She had raised free children, and free children, sooner or later, would make their own paths, even if that meant moving away for a time. But she was ready. And more importantly, they were too. A few months after returning from the trip, Emily received an unexpected call from Carmen, her old friend and first supporter, now living with her daughter in rural Vermont. "Mrs. Collins, sorry to bother you like this, but I thought you should know I have tests here." And the doctor confirmed, "It's cancer." Emily felt the ground disappear for a moment. Carmen had been her safe harbor at the darkest moment of her life. Without her, she might not have been able to stay on her feet in the first months of pregnancy. "I'm coming there. Today." In less than 24 hours, Emily was in the small town of Stowe. Carmen received her with the same smile as always, but her weakened body revealed the gravity of the situation. "I don't want pity, my child. I just wanted to see you and tell you that I consider you a true daughter." Emily held her friend's hands. "You are part of my story, and now it's time to take care of you, as you took care of me." In the months that followed, Emily divided herself between Boston and Stowe. She set up a support network with doctors, therapies, caregivers, but it was on the porch of Carmen's simple house, under the starry sky of the countryside, that the most remarkable conversations took place. "I worry about you, you know," Carmen said one night. "Everything you've built is beautiful, but sometimes it seems like you live as someone who still needs to prove something." Emily reflected on this for days. Back in the capital, she requested temporary leave from her executive functions at the Flavor Group. Renee took over the leadership, and Emily dedicated herself to an old project, creating a school for emotional management and leadership training for women. "It's time to teach not just how to cook or be an entrepreneur, but to exist truthfully, without fear of being who you are," she explained in an interview with a magazine. She called the project Roots, in honor of the seeds planted by Carmen, her grandmother, and so many other women who had shaped her. Meanwhile, Hannah and Anthony were maturing. She began studying theater, in addition to gastronomy, he, coding and law. Emily watched them flourishing like distinct trees in the same forest. It was during one of these visits to Carmen, now very debilitated, that she received her last request. "When I'm gone, don't make a sad funeral. Make a lunch at home flavor, and tell my story, so other women know they can rise too," Emily promised and fulfilled. The week following Carmen's passing, the restaurant where everything began was closed for a day for a special event. It was called Table of Gratitude. Each dish brought a memory, a phase, a feeling. On the napkins, instead of a logo, one could read, "For every woman who once welcomed another as a daughter." At the end of the afternoon, Emily took the improvised stage in the dining room of Home Flavor. She looked at Hannah and Anthony and said, "It's possible to start over from anywhere. I know because I started over from the rain, and I found shelter in a woman who called me daughter without asking for anything in return. Today, we are the shelter, and that is our mission now." The audience, composed of former students, chefs, politicians, and friends, remained in reverent silence for a few seconds. Then they gave her a standing ovation. There, Emily realized that life had given her everything she needed. And more, it had given her the power to give back to the world. A few months after the Table of Gratitude event, Emily received a special invitation. The renowned European guide, Taste and Soul, had announced that Essence had been selected to compete for the Best Restaurant in North America award. It would be the first time that an American enterprise founded by a solo woman would compete for the title. "This is huge, Emily," said Renee, almost breathless as she entered her office. "They'll come to dine here, in secret, at some point in the next few weeks. We need to be impeccable, inspired, transcendent." Emily smiled. She no longer felt the old butterflies in her stomach. She knew who she was. She knew what she had built. But she also knew she wasn't alone. She called Marcus, organized a meeting. with the chefs and asked one clear thing. I don't want you to try to impress them. I want you to touch their hearts. Cook as if it were the last dinner before departing. Put soul on the plate. Meanwhile, family life followed its course. Hannah was participating in a school play, interpreting Joan of Arc. Anthony was finalizing a project for an NGO that used technology to map families in hunger situations. And Robert, increasingly present, was beginning to integrate naturally into the children's daily lives. One night, after rehearsing with Hannah, Robert asked Emily to accompany him to the building's terrace. Do you have time for a glass of wine? She hesitated but nodded. The sky was clear, Boston's lights pulsed below, and for a moment time seemed to have slowed down. You know, Emily, Robert began, raising his glass. Sometimes I wonder if there's still room for us, somehow. She took a deep breath. What we had doesn't erase, Robert, but it also doesn't repeat. We grew, we hurt, we changed. Love may have changed form, but it still exists. Only now it serves our children. He lowered his glass, thoughtful. I'd like to be closer, to be by your side in the next chapters, not as a husband, perhaps, but as something more solid. Emily looked at him with tenderness and firmness. Then be solid, be constant, not with words but with presence. Life doesn't need grand gestures, Robert. It needs consistency. The following week, the evaluator's visit happened without fanfare. 3 people, discreet, entered the restaurant and ordered the tasting menu. They left 2 hours later in silence. Emily knew it had been a success when one of the cooks, emotional, said, one of them cried at the 4th dish. It was the one with beans, garlic foam and nut farofa. He said it was like coming home. 3 months later, during an event in Mexico City, the result was announced. Essence won the award for Best Restaurant in North America. Emily took the stage to a standing ovation. With teary eyes, she held the trophy and said, "This award isn't just mine. It belongs to the girl who was expelled while pregnant and walked under the rain. It belongs to the woman who believed she could be shelter, not storm. And it belongs to all who today put love on the plate to feed the world. Thank you." Applauded on her feet, Emily felt that moment was more than recognition. It was the confirmation that she had fulfilled her promise made years ago under the storm, to survive and to return stronger.